بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. سلام علی آل یاسین. السلام علیک یا داعی الله و ربانی آیاته. السلام علیک یا باب الله و دیان دینه. السلام علیک یا خلیفة الله و ناصر حقه. السلام علیک یا حجة الله و دلیل ارادته. السلام علیک یا تالی کتاب الله و ترجمانه. السلام علیک فی آناء لیلک و اطراف نهارک. السلام علیک یا بقیة الله فی ارضه. السلام علیک یا میثاق الله الذی اخذه و وکده. السلام علیک یا وعد الله الذی ضمنه. السلام علیک ایها العلم المنسوب والعلم المسبوب والغوث والرحمة الواسعة وعدا غير مكذوب. السلام عليك حين تقوم. السلام عليك حين تقعد. السلام عليك حين تقرأ وتبين. السلام عليك حين تصلي وتقنت. السلام عليك حين تركع وتسجد. السلام عليك حين تهلل وتكبر. السلام عليك حين تحمد وتستغفر. السلام عليك حين تصبح وتمسي. السلام عليك في الليل إذا يغشى والنهار إذا تجلى. السلام عليك أيها الإمام المأمون. السلام عليك أيها المقدم المأمول. السلام عليك بجوامع السلام. أشهدك يا مولاي أني أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله لا حبيب إلا هو وأهله. وأشهدك يا مولاي أن عليا أمير المؤمنين حجته والحسن حجته والحسين حجته وعلي ابن الحسين حجته ومحمد بن علي حجته وجعفر بن محمد حجته وموسى بن جعفر حجته وعلي بن موسى حجته ومحمد بن علي حجته وعلي بن محمد حجته والحسن بن علي حجته وأشهد أنك حجة الله أنتم الأول والآخر وأن رجعتكم حق لا ريب فيها يوم لا ينفع نفسا إيمانها لم تكن آمنت من قبل أو كسبت في إيمانها خيرا وأن الموت حق وأن ناكرا ونكيرا حق وأشهد أن النشر حق والبعث حق وأن الصراط حق والمرصاد حق والميزان حق والحشر حق والحساب حق والجنة والنار حق والوعد والوعيد بهما حق يا مولاي شقي من خالفكم وسعد من أطاعكم فاشهد على ما أشهدتك عليه وأنا ولي لك بريء من عدوك فالحق ما رضيتموه والباطل ما أسخطتموه والمعروف ما أمرتم به والمنكر ما نهيتم عنه فنفسي مؤمنة بالله وحده لا شريك له وبرسوله وبأمير المؤمنين وبكم يا مولاي أولكم وآخركم ونصرتي معدة لكم ومودتي خالصة لكم آمين آمين.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. سلام عرض میکنم خدمت برادران و خواهران گرامی. میلاد با سعادت حضرت علی علیه السلام و روز پدر رو به خدمت همه افراد کمیونیتی، به خصوص پدران عزیز توی کمیونیتی و به خصوص کسایی که اولی باره که روز پدر رو به عنوان پدر تجربه میکنن خدمتون تبریک و تهنیت عرض میکنم. همچنین میلاد با سعادت امام امام محمد تقی رو هم خدمتون تبریک عرض میکنم. برای اینکه بتونیم به افراد بیشتری تو کمیونیتی جذب برنامه‌های مرکز بکنیم، برنامه امروز رو به صورت زبان انگلیسی انشالله اجرا میکنیم و سخنان عزیزمون آقای شیخ شاه خدایی هم خواهش کردیم که به زبان انگلیسی لکچر رو بیان بکنن. برای همین من به زبان انگلیسی هم صحبت میکنم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Thank you for joining us for tonight's weekly program. Tonight is a special night, and we celebrate the birth of Imam Ali alayhi salam, and we use this opportunity to congratulate all the fathers of our community, especially those who are experiencing their first Father's Day. We are celebrating also the birth of Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, and we pray to Allah to make us among the true believers and followers of our Imams. We are very excited to have Sheikh Mahdi Shahkulahi joining us and give us a lecture about Imam Ali alayhi salam and Father's Day. Sheikh Shahkulahi is a renowned Islamic scholar. He's currently pursuing his doctoral study in the Department of Theological and Religious Studies at Georgetown University. He has also completed his earlier studies in the city of Qom. We are very excited to have him, and I invite him to benefit us with his insightful lecture. Salamun alaikum, Sheikh Shahkulahi.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you so much for that gracious introduction. And I want to begin by expressing my congratulations on this auspicious occasion that we come together really to express our love and affection and also our allegiance to the character of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. As we are here to reaffirm our allegiances, it's a reminder that we are Muslims who are aspiring towards being the best followers of the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, through the example of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. I'll keep my my remarks brief, and the reason for that is because we can spend many hours as many thousands, hundreds of thousands of pages have been written to try and capture really the spirit of the life of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. We won't be able to do that. So whether my remarks are half an hour or an hour or an hour and a half, it really will not even begin to scratch the surface. I think it's appropriate tonight to share one of a series of accounts that we have narrated from Imam Ali alayhi salam and also the Ahlul Bayt that speak about this special connection that those who have love for Ahlul Bayt but also find themselves truly committed to living out the instructions that they have given a select group of people that are intentional in their commitment towards being Muslims and mu'min to the full capacity. We associate that with the concept of Shia, and this is it's an identifier that we use, and though it is widespread to acknowledge those who understand the model of successorship, wilaya, to be one that is divinely appointed through the family of the Holy Prophet, specifically those of Ahlul Bayt, alayhi salam. But if we look to the instructions that are given in the characterization that Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam themselves have of this title, we find a great depth of responsibility and understanding. And what I want to do is just really speak to that by sharing one riwayah from Imam Ali alayhi salam, and this can be a great model for us as inshallah those aspiring to be Shia, but also fathers, mothers that want to instill a sense of love and affection for Ahlul Bayt within these instructions. We can use that as a model to build our families around that. So the first thing to remember is that this idea of being a Shia is deeply rooted in this hierarchy of wilaya. So wilaya, of course, is understood to be a proximity that one enjoys friendship, enjoys love, enjoys rule and control. And sometimes lexically, this notion of wilaya has been defined as a united hand or united effort in the pursuit of good or evil. Yadun wahidun yajtami'una or mujtami'un fil khayri wa shar. So there is a hierarchy that signifies a united worldview, a united ideology, and a united way of life, a set of principles that govern our personal, our social, our political, and our spiritual aspects of life. So we have the broadest wilaya, the wilaya of Allah, that the Quran speaks about time and time again. Allahu waliyul ladina amanu. The wilaya of the prophetic figures, the Anbiya and the Rusul, and also the wilaya of the ambassadors, the wilaya of the Imams. And finally, the final level is the wilaya that the believers, that the mu'mineen have with one another. And each of them, again, fall within this larger idea of being in a relationship. Now, each of them have their own unique properties, but they all speak to the same concept of being in unity with one another. So this riwayah that's shared from Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam begins, and he's outlining what it means to be Shia. Shi'atuna, number one, al-mutabadiluna fi wilayatina. That our followers, those who have those intentional commitments to be of our followers, they are those who are reciprocating in their gifts, in their giving, in their friendship, in their relationship regarding our wilaya, or out of the path, out of the source of our wilaya. So to be reciprocal, mutabadilun, number one, obviously it's the opposite of being stingy, bukhl. It's to be open-handed. But to be open-handed is not just in one's spending. Of course, that is one of the ways that we spend and we use our resources in ways that brings about closer affection, closer love, closer brotherhood and sisterhood, closer collaborative potentials. The Shia, number one, are those who spend in this way. So I want to give a few examples of those individuals who gave, but not their giving in the sense of necessarily dedicating material resources. So one is the example of Abu Nizar, and he is the son of the Ethiopian king Najashi. If you all remember the early history of Islam, where the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, sent letters to many of the rulers and kings in the surrounding regions. One of them was, of course, this king of Ethiopia, who reacted very favorably to the Prophet's letter and granted refuge to those who sought refuge and asylum there, led by the esteemed Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. So this king had a son by the name of Abu Nizar. One of the narrations, it says that this child had an affinity for Islam, and he wanted to become Muslim. And the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, took the responsibility upon himself to look after him and to kind of take an active role in his development. And upon the death of his father, the king, the people of Ethiopia brought news of his father's death to this son and requested that he come and take charge. And of course, this was passed from one generation to the next. And his response was that I'd rather spend 1 hour at the service of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. That's more valuable to me than a lifetime of kingship. And after the death of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he served in the house of Lady Fatima salamullah alayha. Interestingly, in another narration we have from Halabi in his Sirah, he says that as a result of this regime change in Ethiopia, Abu Nizar was taken captive prisoner and was transported to Mecca, and he was being sold as a kind of a spoils of war, as a slave that was taken as a result of this change. And they see him, Imam Ali alayhi salam sees him, and it's recorded that he purchases him, sets him free, and in Medina he gives him responsibility. He puts him in charge of an estate that he had, a farm, and and a well, and he's responsible towards managing the affairs here. He's now well known as this Abu Nizar. So the moral of this example of Abu Nizar is that Imam Ali alayhi salam, obviously he frees him. He plays an important role in that, the agency and independence that he has. He gives him an education. He gives him employment. But also, this young man had the opportunity to, kind of continue in the family business, so to speak, in that tradition of rule. But for him, he had identified that there is something invaluable that he had experienced in being in a relationship, not only with the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, but with the Muslim community. And the way that he valued that was incomparable to the opportunity to kind of be in an elite and to be of the ruling class. So this is obviously I don't want to call it an extreme example, but really what's on the table are the stakes are extremely high, and this person experiences the highs and the lows. For us, as fathers, as sons, as mothers, as daughters, what are the opportunities that are presented to us in life? And how do we think about the kind of the intangible values that we enjoy in relationships? Sometimes we're tempted by the, by the glitz and the glamour of the world. And sometimes we're just completely overwhelmed. It's like we can never settle because we're running in every which direction. We can play the role of supporting one another in removing some of these barriers. Imam Ali alayhi salam stepped in here. He was going to do it regardless of whether this person was a son of a king or not. But because he identified that potential, he took an action intentionally. This young man has potential. Why should anyone live a life of servitude, but him specifically? So he invested. And in that investment, obviously, it pays great reward. He gives him responsibility and cares for him. And one of the fruits of that labor is that the son of Abu Nizar, by the name of Nasr, is also one of the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. And it's narrated that he becomes one of the martyrs in Karbala. So again, al-mutabadiluna fi walayatina. For us to be looking for ways that we can strengthen the larger network of walaya. And walaya is not something by name, because love cannot be something by name. Affection and relationship cannot be something that we speak about. It's something that we enjoy, and we feel it as deeply as we can in our bones and in our souls. So striving towards that is a very virtuous thing. And I think we need a lot of that. It's sometimes disheartening to hear that there is, unfortunately, discord amongst the lovers and sympathizers of Ahlul Bayt. How can we strategize ways to strengthen our bonds, and for us to spend to this end? Al-mutabadiluna fi walayatina. So that's one example. Another short example that I'll give is to do this badl in giving. Again, it's not just about spending in that. Sometimes it's spending from your public image. Sometimes it's spending from your popularity. Sometimes it's spending from taking away from certain life opportunities that might present themselves if you lean certain ideological ways, certain political ways. This is an example of Dharih al-Muharabi. He's one of the companions of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, and one day he comes to the Imam complaining that, when I explain the merits, the blessings of ziyarah of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam to the people, they ridicule me. They accuse me of attributing lies to you. And the Imam responds to him, just leave the people with what they believe. It's hard for them. He says, Ya dharih da'i nas yadhabuna haythu sha'u. It's just something beyond their current capacity to understand and appreciate. You've done your job in kind of speaking that truth, but the fact that people are not ready to appreciate that should not deter you from doing that. So again, sometimes our giving is in the form of our character, our public image, and that may be somewhat tarnished, maybe completely destroyed as a result of speaking the truth, even sometimes to believing people, quote unquote. But this badl also exists in that capacity too. So that's number one. Shi'atuna al-mutabadiluna fi wilayatina. Number two, al-muhabbuna fi mawaddatina. This ties in to number one. A lot of these enjoy that kind of linear relationship. Our followers are those who love each other regarding our affection. Tafa'ul, mutahabbun, it implies a mutual love. both parties are actively engaged and participate in this giving and receiving of affection. In a riwayah from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, it's narrated, إِنَّ الْمُؤْمِنَ لَيَسْكُنُ إِلَى مُؤْمِنٍ. A mu'min brings tranquility to another mu'min. كَمَا يَسْكُنُ الظَّمْآنُ إِلَى الْمَاءِ الْبَارِدِ. Just like the thirsty one is quenched by cold water. So again, working towards establishing these relationships where people not only are in, express that love and affection, but that affection is informed by the love of Ahlul Bayt. We always have this idea that we try to teach our kids, younger kids that sometimes I have the pleasure of teaching. We ask them, well, do you love your mother and father? They say, yes, I love them very much. We ask them, why do you love them? And one of the ideas we're getting them to think about is, do you love them for the simple fact that they're your mother and father? Yes, and that's good. But can you also love them because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves them? And because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instructed us to love them? And because the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, has instructed us to love them? This is an intensified love. It's a love that's not just about a blood relationship. It's also a spiritual one. It's also a religious one. It's also an existential one. Adding these multiple layers of relationship of love really helps us in times of crisis and difficulty. We all experience turbulence through the duration of our relationships. Life is a journey, relationships are a journey. When we experience that difficulty, those challenges, to have these multiple layers of relationship really help us when it comes to reconciliation and when it comes to forgiveness and retribution. That's really important, because if one of them fails, at least there's a second level that can be there to save us. We forget this a lot of times, and that leads to unfortunately lengthy disputes and broken relationships. So finding within one's heart, out of the love of Ahlul Bayt, to go and to strengthen relationships or to restore fractured relationships, that is a part of what it means to be in love with Ahlul Bayt, to be a part of that wilayah. It's as much about spending, about feeding, about building. All of those things are correct, but it's also about relationship. And that's sometimes the more difficult one and the one that we want to push away. It's been narrated from Ahlul Bayt, says, Awsani Rabbi bi-sab'in. I've been recommended and admonished to 7 things by my Lord. Awsani bil-ikhlasi fi sirri wal-alaniya. Number 1 is sincerity in privacy and solitude and in the public eye. وَأَنْ أَعْفُوَ عَمَّنْ ظَلَمَنِي. And for me to forgive he or she who has wronged or oppressed me. وَأُعْطَى مَنْ حَرَمَنِي. And to give the one who has denied me. وَأَصِلَ مَنْ قَطَعَنِي. And to connect with one who has disconnected me. وَأَنْ يَكُونَ صَمْتِي فِكْرًا وَنَظَرِي عِبْرًا. And for my silence to be coupled with reflection and my sight with learning. So again, this is sometimes the more difficult thing to do. How can we, we say in this, be the bigger man or be the bigger woman. I don't know what that means, but how can we draw from our love for Ahlul Bayt to extend a hand of reconnection when they've disconnected us, and for to give to one who has denied us. So one thing that really helps with that, al-mutahabbuna fi mawaddatina, is to remember that none of us are perfect. I sound like I'm bringing excuses for our shortcomings, but the reality is that we're all works in progress. From Imam, I was sharing this with a group just the other day. He states, "Man nadhara fi aybi nafsi ishtaghala an aybi ghayri." Person who is cognizant, aware of their own shortcomings, they abstain from looking too deeply in the shortcomings of other people. And they work on themselves. And the more that they're able to spend working on themselves and give others the benefit of the doubt that they are working on themselves, this becomes a powerful way of improving one's relationships. So that's number 2. Number 3, المتزاورون في إحياء أمرنا. Again, it's building on one another one by one. Those who are in relationship with us, who are following us, they call themselves Shia. They are the ones who are visiting one another, who are making riwayah, they were making ziyarah of one another. Right? Making ziyarah of one another. Al-mutazawiruna, but for what purpose? So, first of all, being in touch with people, visiting people as frequently as you can, whether it be in the form of coming together in a congregational setting, whether it's inviting each other to your homes and having these house parties, fantastic. The more of these that you can do, the better. Great, building those relationships out of the love of Ahlul Bayt. But also, the nature of this should not just be building relationships just because, but it should be driven by the revival of our affairs. Fi ihya'i amrina. So Ahlul Bayt tell us that this can manifest in a lot of different ways. You know, one of the things that we're told in riwayat is when you get together, have some mention of us. Have some mention of us. What does that mean? It means, and again, I said in some accounts, it says, if there's a group of our Shia that are getting together, there should be some mention of us in the form of recalling our riwayat, our ahadith, our teachings, our lives, and the example of that. You know, sometimes that happens in the form of recitation of majlis, as we call, maybe a musiba, a rosa of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam and the Shuhada of Karbala. Excellent. Sometimes it's in the way of recalling examples and lessons from the lives of Ahlul Bayt, like, on the occasions of their birth anniversaries or even their martyrdom anniversaries. And sometimes it's when we just get together for house parties, if there can just be a riwayah that's read, a hadith that's read, even if we spend 5 minutes just to read it and have a small conversation about it. Again, when I say small conversation, not that it becomes a highly charged, religiously charged, politically charged conversation, but to have a conversation centered around a hadith, a riwayah. That culture itself, establishing that culture, benefits us in so many ways. Number 1, we have regular reading of riwayat. Now, if you have a regular reading and sharing of riwayat, as a natural consequence of that, you'll know where to look to find riwayat. You may familiarize yourself with some books, some sources, and that itself is a great, a positive step. But also it gets us thinking about those things that are important to Ahlul Bayt. The more we review these things, the more we're reminded about how we should be spending our time, our money, our relationships towards those ends. It connects it with al-mutabadiluna fi wilayatina, al-muhabbuna fi mahabbatina, and also al-mutazawiruna fi ihya'i amrina. So getting together, and those get-togethers for them to be purposeful for the advancement of the affairs of Muslims, the advancement of the affairs of the Shia. That's really important. So that's number 3. I'll try to be a little bit quicker so I don't go over my time. Number 4, our Shi'as are alladhina in ghadibu lam yadlibu. They are those that when they become angry and are potentially enraged, they don't become oppressive, which means that they have a control over their anger. So it takes for granted that we will become angry. We may become enraged. We are human, after all. No one is expecting us to exhibit behaviors that are beyond our human nature. But when we do, what level of control do we have? And how do we ensure that we don't completely destroy and annihilate everything that's around us? In Surah Al-Imran, verses 133 and 134, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. Hasten towards the forgiveness of your Lord. وَجَنَّةٍ عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضُ أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. And a paradise that is vast as the heavens and the earth, prepared for the muttaqin, the God conscious. الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء, they give, they spend in ease and in adversity. والكاظمين الغيظ, they have something, they have a habit, they have built an ability to suppress their anger when it's triggered. And as a consequence, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, they excuse the faults of the people. Again, excuse the faults of the people. So it takes for granted that the other person's in the wrong. They've done something wrong. It's not like disputed. وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ means, yes, the other person has done something to wrong you. But the muttaqin are those who are كَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ. وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah indeed loves the virtuous, those who manifest ihsan. So finding ways to control one's anger, and especially when the source of that is another individual who is in walaya with them. So what does that generally mean? It generally means family. It generally means those friends in walaya, those who, your masjid mates, your those who are members of your community, and it may include other people too. But those are the people that you have the most intimate relationships with. It's really important for us to have, and again, I say this not because I'm like that, but because I want to be like that, for us to have some sort of control, that we don't end up hurting the people who are closest to us out of the love that we have for them. This is a recurring theme over and over and over, where parents and children sometimes have difficult moments in their relationship. A lot of times the breakdown of communication and the fracturing of their relationship is we hear this all the time, is rooted in the fact that the parent says, I love my child so much, I can't allow them to do this, to hurt themselves, to do something that is not in their best interest. I can't allow myself to let them do that, and for me to just sit idly by. So most times it comes from a place of love, but it's important that we remember, as important as the outcome of the person's action is the way that we do it, so that we preserve the relationship, that next time a person is making a mistake, they still have you to turn to lend them support. And not that we've burned bridges in ways that when a person makes a serious mistake in life, their support system completely collapses around them. And unfortunately and ironically, because of religious or spiritual reasons. What a shame. And it's really unfortunate to see those things. So my aspiration on a night like this, that I'm trying to best learn from and hopefully resemble somewhat the example of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, I learned the ways that I can remain in a relationship even with people who I know are making egregious mistakes, but I still leave that channel of communication open. I think those of you who are you're familiar with the life of Imam Ali can think of examples on so many different fronts that this is true. I don't want to really spend time in getting into those details. Number 5, and we're almost done. The Shia are those وَإِنْ رَضُوا لَمْ يُسْرِفُوا. So when they're angry, they are, they're able to control themselves. They don't commit an injustice. They're not oppressive. And also when they're pleased, when they're happy, when things are going well, they're not extravagant. They're not extravagant. They don't engage in israf. This is one of those things that are really tough, I think, for us living in these circumstances. Again, I'm not saying everyone has the same type of living experience or circumstances. Many of us are struggling. Some of us are, we're living comfortably compared to what our life may have looked like, let's say, in other parts of the world, in other geographies. Falling into complacency, I think, is a very serious risk for us here. We get tied up with the day-to-day. We have personal obligations, we have family obligations. And if we're not careful and we don't support one another, before we know it, it's like our time is up, and it's time for us to transition to the next life. And we look and we say, wow, you know, I and we could have done so much more to advance the cause of the Imam and to be a voice for the voiceless and to fight for the oppressed in the world. And for some reason, I didn't. That's one of really the anxiety, one of the anxieties that I have personally. And I'm speaking personally because this is a gathering of friends. We are in this bond of walaya together. I have this anxiety, you know, I'm trying, but is there something about the circumstances of my life that it's much easier to be complacent and not to push as hard and grind compared to other brothers and sisters that are in walaya with us in other parts of the world? They don't enjoy that. So this israf, finding what israf means to each and every one of us and making sure that we don't exceed that bound of extravagance. Number 6, barakatun ala man jawaru. This individual that enjoys this relationship of being Shia, they are a blessing upon the ones who are their neighbors. There's so much in our tradition that speaks about the attention that is due to the neighbor. And allow me just to share one or two, accounts of what the tradition says. And this really, you know, it deserves its own session. And hopefully we can spend that time to speak about effective ways to establish relationship with our neighbors, be they Muslim or not, be they Shia or not. The teachings of Islam don't speak about a sensitivity towards neighbors that are only Muslim, although there is a heightened sensitivity there. In Surah An-Nisa, verse number 36, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, وَاعْبُدُ اللَّهِ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Worship Allah, do not engage in any level of shirk. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Extend ihsan, goodness, to your parents. وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى, to the near ones, the relatives. وَالْيَتَامَى, the orphans. وَالْمَسَاكِينَ, the needy. وَالْجَارِ ذِي قُرْبَى, وَالْجَارِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى, and the near neighbor. وَالْجَارِ الْجُنُبِ, and also the distant neighbor. So those who are in your immediate proximity, if you want to think of it in the terms of your actual neighborhood, and the distant neighbor, either within your neighborhood, those who are a little further away, or those who live in relatively close proximity to you. So in your mind, think about, okay, who are my immediate neighbors in my neighborhood? Am I in a relationship with them? Do I at least know their names? Do they know my name? That's the first thing. And the second thing is my distant neighbors. Maybe the Muslims that live in my immediate geography, like how many of them do I know? How many of them do I enjoy some sort of a personal relationship? Even if we don't have inviting each other to each other's homes all the time, but do I at least have some sort of visitation of my neighbors to make sure that they know I'm here, I care for them, and they can reach out to me in case they need anything. The Quran is very sensitive. Walidain, dhil qurba, yatama, masakin, and then it speaks about the jar. And it also speaks about wasahibi bil jamb, the companion by your side, wabn sabil, the traveler, wama malakat aymanukum, your servants. Inna Allah la yuhibbu man kana mukhtalan fakhura. Indeed, Allah does not like those who are arrogant and boastful. Sometimes failure to establish relationships is not through arrogance or being boastful, I would imagine. It's just we're busy and maybe we're shy. But to break out of that shyness and introversion, to again enjoy a relationship with our neighbors. And I'll just share this from Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. He tells us, "Min husn al-jiwar tafaqud al-jar." Of the signs of a good neighbor is being informed of their condition. Now, again, it's not to pry in anyone's personal life, but to just generally know how things are going, what's going on in the lives of my neighbors. Again, this is meant to assure that you can lend support when a person needs. And there's a very famous example of Sayyid Bahr al-Ulum and Sayyid Jawad Amali, that they had this experience of his neighbor would buy cheap dates from the bazaar. Sayyid Bahr al-Ulum's giving this example with Sayyid Jawad al-Amali. He says that I had a neighbor that would buy cheap dates from the bazaar to feed his family with that. He couldn't afford better ones, so he would always buy the cheaper ones because they cost less. He says that night his debt exceeded what the shopkeeper allowed. A lot of times people buy their groceries or their needs on this kind of IOU system. We don't have that really here. We have credit here, but it's their own version of credit. So the shopkeeper said, "Listen, you exceeded your credit. I'm not going to give you anything." So he returned home empty-handed. The same night, Sayyid Bahr al-Ulum called his student, Sayyid Jawad Amili, who is the neighbor of this person, and he begins berating him. Sayyid Bahr al-Ulum begins speaking very sharply to Sayyid Jawad, and he says, "I heard your neighbor is poor, and he has nothing to eat." And Sayyid Jawad said, "I didn't know. I can't believe it. I would have done something." And this is the famous statement that's attributed to Sayyid Bahr al-Ulum. He said that if you knew of the state of your neighbor and you did nothing about it, then I would be sure of your kufr. I would have for sure considered you a kafir, because you have denied, you have concealed the fact that you have a responsibility towards your neighbor and you did nothing about it. My criticism of you right now is that you didn't know the state of your neighbor, and because of that, you failed to act. And again, this is one of these things that I personally see time and time again, not in the context of neighbors, but in times of loss. Oh, I wish I knew I could have done more. So yes, those are sincere feelings, I think, that people have. But the very sentiment of I wish I knew more, the question then becomes, could we have known, and how do we go about positioning ourselves in ways that we can best help people before a time of crisis? Neighbor of Sayyid Jawad is in a time of crisis right now. He can't feed his family. So Sayyid Bahr al-Ulum is extremely critical of him because he allowed it to get to this point. And that's where we also need to be a little bit sensitive. How can we be proactive to not allow members of our community, neighbors, to find themselves in a vulnerable and jeopardized position? So then they obviously gives them some food. They go prepare some food and they take it delivered to the neighbor. And so I'll just move past because we're out of time. I apologize. I'll just go to number 7. The last thing the Imam mentions, that the Shia are silmun liman khalatu. They are a source of peace and safety for the ones that they are mixing with. Mixing with means, again, those who they enjoy relationship with. A Shia is to be known as a person who can be a source of refuge and safety and security for those that they are around, which means that they won't be judgmental, which means that they won't attack them in a position of vulnerability. They will receive them as they are and work with them to help kind of relieve them of the challenge that they find themselves in. To censure and to attack a person who's already down is, first of all, it's not something to be proud of, and it could potentially be something that's hurtful and cowardly. So being known as a follower of Ahlul Bayt, to be a place of refuge for those who have been forgotten, for those who are hurting, that's really something that is awe-inspiring. And we know this of the examples of Ahlul Bayt, and especially in the life of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, that his care for those who have been forgotten in society was so much to the point where when his martyrdom came, that his loss was felt in that community, in that forgotten, marginalized, struggling, impoverished community. So again, thinking in smaller but bigger picture too, how do we position ourselves in ways that we become a real resource to those who are hurting in the world, and they expect that from us, and not in exchange for anything, not in exchange for them to acknowledge us or to give us thanks or to allow us to evangelize or to propagate, or none of those things. Imam Ali never had strings attached when he helped people. He never said, "Hey, I'm going to help you with the condition that you support me when it comes time to choose the Khalifa." No, wasn't trying to win votes. He was deeply concerned for people because they were people, because they were servants of God. And all the more so because they were Muslim. Again, maybe having that the expectation of giving without receiving can be a very powerful thing. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the right of this night and by the togetherness that we have, may we inshallah be of the true followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam, the true Shia. May we learn to manifest these qualities in our personalities so that we may also be of the true Shia, the true followers of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and the Ahlul Bayt. Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much, Sheikh Mahdi, for that insightful speech. I know I definitely learned a lot myself by listening to that valuable speech. Inshallah, we look forward to having you more joining us in the future, inshallah.
Inshallah, I look forward to it. Thank you so much, everyone. Please keep me in your du'as. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. So we'll have a Kahoot competition, and we have 3 prizes for the winners. So I'll share the link. Everybody who wants to participate in the competition, go to this link, and there will be a code that you need to enter in order to start the competition. So the link is kahoot.it. Please go there and I'll give you the link. Yeah, and I entered the link in the chat box. It's loading on my end. Inshallah, I'll enter the link soon. So the link for competition is 485-6492. That's the PIN number. So please go to kahoot.it and enter that PIN number. We'll give everybody. و علیکم السلام. بفرمایید.
اینو میشه تایپ کنید توی چت بزنم؟
پینو حتما.
بیا فاطمه بیا بازی میکنم.
من پینو توی چتم وارد کرد. We'll wait for 30 more seconds and inshallah we'll start the competition. All right, so we'll start. First question. Each day that the person is Eid. All right. So each day that the person avoids making sins is Eid. Next question. Looks like Mokhles Azami is the person who responded correctly and the fastest way. All right, next question. Father's Day is on mid-Shaban, 10th of Rajab, 13th of Rajab, or 15th of Ramadan. All right, Father's Day is on 13th of Rajab. Great work. Mr. Azam is still on the top. What city was Imam Ali alayhi salam born in? Mecca, Medina, Najaf, or Mazar Sharif? So yeah, Imam Ali alayhi salam was born in Kaaba in Mecca. Mr. Azam is still on top. Next question. Imam Ali alayhi salam, no support is more reliable than friends, family, consultation, or school. Consultation. So no support is more reliable than consultation. So Ash is moving to the top. Next question. Imam Ali's sword was known as Zulfaqar, Zuljana, double blade, Damascus steel. So Imam Ali alayhi salam's sword was known as Zulfaqar. Ash is still on top. Next question. What's the name of Imam Ali alayhi salam's father? Muhammad, Abu Talib, Abdullah, Abdul Muttalib. So the father of Imam Ali alayhi salam, his name was Abu Talib. Ash is top scorer and Mr. Azam is following. Imam Ali alayhi salam, the most fearful loneliness is arrogance, greed, impatience, wishful thinking. Arrogance was the correct one. So the most fearful loneliness is arrogance. Wuhan moved to the top, followed by COVID-21. Next question. The heavenly hadith of there is no warrior knight like Ali alayhi salam is known to first come at the conquest of Mecca, Ghadir Khum, Battle of Ashab, or Battle of Uhud. So it was Battle of Uhud. COVID-21 moved to the top. What does Zainab literally mean? Sunrise, prayer, the ornament of father, father's star. So Zainab means the ornament of father. Next and last question. So COVID-21 is still on the top scorer, followed by Wuhan and Ali K. Last question. According to Imam Ali alayhi salam, we can make friends with a liar, miser, fool, or poor. Poor. So according to Imam Ali alayhi salam, we can make friends with the poor, but not the other categories. All right, let's take a look at the scores and see who are our top 3 scorers and winners of tonight's competition. Ash was number 3, Wuhan was number 2, and number 1 was COVID-21. Great job, everybody. So everyone who tried to participate in the competition was a winner. We only have just a couple of awards just as a token of appreciation for top scorers that we will inshallah send to them. I asked these 3 top scorers to kindly send an email to imiecb@gmail.com and provide their mailing address so that inshallah we can mail them their gifts. Great work, everybody. Inshallah, we all have learned something new by participating in this competition.
But we like to know who's COVID-21.
COVID-21.
Muhammad Saleh, I think so. It has to be him.
And that wasn't آقای اعظمی, that was a مخلص of آقای اعظمی. سلامت باشید.
Okay, I can tell you who Wuhan was.
Who was it?
That was me.
Great, congratulations.
Thank you.
And who was Ash?
در خدمتیم.
Congratulations.
همسر بنده بودن. من خودم در نقش مخلص آقای اعظمی بودم. خانم ما بود.
All right, great. So women represented tonight and were the winners. All right, great. Congratulations again to everyone for the auspicious birth of Imam Muhammad Taqi and Imam Ali alayhi salam. We also congratulate everybody, especially fathers in our community, for the Father's Day. Ayazami, inshallah, if you could kindly recite the dua.
و شنیدیم بگه یک سر پلاس که همون فرش باشه غم یک سر شادی همیه. دیروز میلاد امام علی بود، فردا وفات دخترش حضرت زینب سلام الله علیها.
آقای اعظمی ببخشین، البته با عرض معذرت از شوخی گذشته میخوایم که برای استاد ما دعا بکنین، به خاطر که دیشب استاد ما از کووید 19 وفات کردن.
خدا رحمت کنه. چشم. همه دعا من نجیب میخونیم برای تمام اموات. شب به اصطلاح نیمه رجب هم هست، فردا هم دعای چیه به اصطلاح داوود خونده بشه. انشالله هر کس که بتونه این کار انجام بده. و در ضمن فردا هم در مسجد ما رنگکاری آخر داریم که انشالله تمام بشه. کسان عزیزان که قائلن شرکت بکنن خلاصه بیایم. زورم ما در خدمت ما هستیم. عرض ندارم، التماس دارم. اللهم صل على محمد و آل محمد و عجل فرجهم. اول دعای من نجیب میخونیم برای خوشنودی جمعی اموات و همچنین خوشنودی حضرت زینب سلام الله علیها به ویژه استاد خواهر عزیز ما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. اما یجیب المضطر اذا دعا و یکشف السوء. اما یجیب المضطر اذا دعا و یکشف السوء. اما یجیب المضطر اذا دعا و یکشف السوء. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وتسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا غريب الغرباء يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء. السلطان أبو الحسن يا علي بن موسى الرضا ورحمة الله وبركاته. أغنياء مكة روند فقراء سوی تو آیند، جان و قربان که تو عجب فقرایی. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا صاحب الزمان يا شريك القرآن يا قاطع البرهان يا إمام الإنس والجان. السلام عليك وعلى آبائك الطيبين الطاهرين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. برای سلامتی کسانی که این صدا رو میشنون و گوش کردن و الان در این برنامه حاضرن، اجماعاً صلوات. اللهم صل علی
محمد و آل محمد. دستتون درد نکنه. شبتون بخیر. انشالله آخر هفته خوبی هم داشته باشید. خدا نگهدار.